So NoSQL versus SQL. What are the differences and when should you use which one? So we got NoSQL, we got SQL, and examples for NoSQL databases would be, of course, MongoDB, which is what we are using in this course, or CouchDB. And for SQL, we could name MySQL or Microsoft SQL, just to give you some examples here. Now, NoSQL databases do not enforce a strict data schema. We talked about collections and documents already, so tables and records in a SQL database, and collections can contain documents with different schemas. So you could have a basic schema for your documents you have, but then for newer documents you could change the schema and add an additional property to it, for example. This is possible with NoSQL databases, and this also makes it very flexible. For SQL databases, we enforce a strict data schema. So if you define the tables and the corresponding records, well, you normally don't deviate from that structure, or deviating from that structure later would be a bit more difficult. Therefore, you should create your data schema, and this is what you stick to in a SQL database. For NoSQL databases, we also have less focus on relations. A relation would be something that if you have a document with the users and a document with the places, then the user's document could contain the place ID to refer to this place, so to establish a connection. Now we can also do this in NoSQL, and we will do it throughout this course, but generally the core focus of NoSQL is again less strict and less focused onto such relations, again to make this whole storing and querying data structure a bit more flexible, you could say. For SQL, well, relations are a core feature. You typically have one table with the users and one table with the corresponding products, and then you need a relation to kind of know which user bought which products. And to summarize these points so far, we can actually say that NoSQL works with independent documents, so the documents are not necessarily related to each other. For SQL databases, well, the records are related. That's again one of the core concepts behind the SQL database actually. These are some differences, but when should you use which database now? Well, NoSQL databases are great for logs, orders, or some chats or messages, so generally whenever you have a high frequency of incoming information that should be stored or requested. Because NoSQL databases are really fast and you can create your own queries quite easily, therefore these are typical application areas for NoSQL databases. SQL databases are rather used for shopping carts, contracts, or generally bigger social networks, so these kind of applications. Now talking about these differences and these recommendations, this is not a hard restriction here. These are some general guidelines you can follow, but you can always deviate from that depending on the application that you want to build. It can also happen that you have both types of databases inside your application. So one specific area of your application interacts with a NoSQL database, the other one with a SQL database. That's not too unusual actually. In this course, we use MongoDB as the Mern Stack is a, well, quite cool combination of different technologies, and it's a lot of fun working with MongoDB and Mongoose later. It allows us to quickly query data and to really interact in a nice and efficient way with the database. But as I said, this is no hard differentiation here, but this is a Mern Stack course, therefore we will use MongoDB here. So that's the differentiation between NoSQL and SQL. And before we then set up MongoDB now, there is one last thing we have to cover. Because actually, if you have a front end, we could actually directly connect this front end to our database. Well, that would be a really bad idea. Let me tell you why.